And then he's turning to a bunch of the other black belts as if I'm not there. Like I'm literally like right next to him, but he's addressing a group of black belts on the other side of him and just talking as if I'm not there. He's like, man, I'm rolling with Adam and he does this and that. It's like bullshit, man. Like, dude's weak and they're just grilling. And I'm just like, I'm right there. I just got so verbally abused.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ Podcast. We have a very special guest here today, Adam Child.
What's up?
Welcome, bro.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Actually, I think this is the first time I've been on the Bulletproof podcast, is it? Or
sat at this desk a couple of times for the Jungle Brothers
podcast. Yeah. I don't think I've ever been on the Bulletproof one, so that's cool, actually.
Yeah. So for those of you who are not aware, our good friend here is also a podcaster. Adam, can you give people a little bit of background, so I don't murder it? Let people know who they're dealing with.
It's a jiu-jitsu podcast.
Not just a podcast, like who you are. Yeah. Introduce you to the audience.
So as JT said, Adam Childs, I'm a black belt under Fabio Gurgel, I think still the only Australian to get a black belt from Fabio. I did most of my career living in Brazil, training there, and I previously ran Alliance Sydney, which I rebranded to Vantage Jiu-Jitsu, is now the gym that I run. I'm Joey's coach, gave Joey his black belt.
There you
go. And maybe to some extent, one of the OG Bulletproof guinea pigs from, we'll get into it, but mine and JT's time training together in Brazil. And yeah, as he mentioned, I run as well a pretty lame little podcast with a student of mine, Kieran Lefebvre. It's called the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And you'd have to be pretty scraping the bottom of the barrel if you want to go check it out.
No, I don't think that's true. I think that's nonsense. Based on the amount of Spotify Wrapped that people like to post.
Yeah,
we are usually.
It's always.
I mean, obviously Rogan's there.
The other podcast.
Yeah. Don't name him. Right?
But it was interesting to me because people who listen to us also listen to you guys.
Yeah. So all of the Spotify Wraps that we got tagged in were not too dissimilar. Like it would have, if it had Beyond Jiu-Jitsu Podcast in it, it had Bulletproof in it as well. Yep. Like nine times out of 10. And we actually recorded an episode this week that I can't recall the exact numbers off the top of my head, but Kieran actually went through some of the percentages and statistics of our Spotify downloads and the Spotify Wrap, which news to me, but apparently it gets lots of shit. Like people hate Spotify Wrapped. I didn't know this was a thing.
What do you mean?
Well, like people like will reply saying, man, who gives a shit? Don't post your lame ass like podcasts that you listen to. And apparently it gets heaps of flack every year.
I dig it.
I think it's great.
Yeah, it's mad.
But I think it's become less popular.
Right.
Like anything, like initially when it came out, people were like, yo, this is cool. It gives me something to share. Whereas now people are like, dude, I don't want to find out that you listen to 17,000 hours of Cardi B. Like, cut it out.
But I guess similar to that, maybe
but
it's
that's
like
kind of the same as like, bro, I don't want to see you lifting weights. We'll get the fuck off my Instagram, dickhead. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, I'm someone who tries to minimize my interaction with social media. I don't use a lot of it. And
that's an excuse that all the bad Instagrammers have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just trying to preserve my mental health.
But so I only really follow accounts of people who I know personally, usually. So if I see, JT, Joey, my brother, whoever, they post theirs, it might inspire me to go, well, fuck, if my brother likes that band or that podcast, there's a chance that I've never heard of it, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue with it.
Referral of podcasts, I believe, is actually one of the great currencies of our time, isn't it?
It is great.
Like when you find one that you like, you just want to tell people.
Yeah.
And I would think that that's largely what attribute the success of our shows to is people going, hey, check this show out. I really enjoy it. So I think being able to share it is just like an extension of that,
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, look, part of the reason why we're all sitting here is Adam and I were in Brazil training together, and at that time, we'll go back on that time, but towards the end of that, Adam's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about going back to Australia. I'll be in Sydney. Who should I train with? Because I can't train with you. You live in Melbourne." And I was like, "You should train with my boy Joe. He's the guy to train with." And so what's cool about that, even though it's me just being the fucking third wheel again. I always do this, people. You don't know it. I'm the great connector. My superpower is the ability to find, differentiated people and bring them together. And then I have to just step the fuck out because I no longer am the best friend.
You guys hard work, huh?
Yeah, I become the fact that people can commiserate over and bond. But it's cool in a lot of ways because being able to go from Adam and I becoming friends in Brazil, and also I live with Adam for a period of time, which I have talked about, which is pretty remarkable. Considering the circumstances we could talk about.
It's a very small room.
It's tight. It was tight. I was sleeping on the floor. And, it's a 1-bedroom apartment. Sometimes Adam would have to message me and be like, "Bro, don't come back just yet. Let me just have some alone time with my wife, please." I'm like, fair.
Yeah, it was a really small room, but it was, yeah. So this story would have come up on multiple, not the Bulletproof one because it's my first time here, but on my podcast as well as the Jungle Brothers podcast, the story would have been told. But yeah, so I had moved to Brazil to train. I didn't have any other career possibilities lying ahead of me. So I started jiu-jitsu when I was in Canada and then got super addicted. And I was like, okay, this can be a career. I moved to Brazil to train full time. And at the time, I was the only Australian who was there. And the gym today would be different to what it previously was, but I guess it was still in a period of time where, gringos weren't super welcome. There wasn't as much online content, if any at all, really. Buying instructionals was literally buying a DVD. People still bought hard copies of, Shanji Hiberto's book, which people still do nowadays, but it's more of a collector's item to some degree than a resource, really. And, so there was me and this one other guy, Ali, who were kind of the only foreigners who were living and training there full time. And I remember when I got there, I got met with the very typical, "Oh, there's this other Australian guy who's been here. Do you know him?" And I was, "Oh yeah," because we all know each other, right, in Australia.
The whole 5 of us.
Yeah. And it was JT who had visited Alliance in Sao Paulo prior to me moving there. And, I was like, "Nah, I don't know him, whatever." And I'd never trained in Australia anyway. And then, I don't know how much longer it was, 12 months, 2 years, whatever it was. And you came back over to visit, which was when we first met. And there was a bit of an initial standoff of me being like, "I'm the Australian dude here." And you being like,
"I'm the Australian."
And JT being like, "But I was here first." But then we quite quickly hit it off. And I think by that stage I was already speaking Portuguese. So maybe it was, I was somewhat valuable to JT to help translate some stuff or whatever. I don't know, but we quite quickly hit it off. And
Portuguese.
You want to understand these lessons? You talk to me.
And that first stint, man, we trained together heaps. I think I was a blue and you were a purple or something.
Yeah.
And then you came back home, and then the second trip over, you came back over, and that's when we lived together in
2014.
Super small. It would be half the size of the office we're sitting in now. I think it was 4 meters by 4 meters, 4 meters by 5 meters. And that was everything.
There was a very unique...
The whole thing.
Well, that was bed, fridge, washing machine, stove.
Dude.
Bathroom, everything.
There was a very unique feature in the bathroom where you had to step over the toilet, to get into the shower.
Yeah, you could take a shit and shower at the same time. They were, pretty much. And it's, by the time I left that apartment, people who have lived in Brazil or Brazilians would be aware of this, but the showers there not all of them, but it's very common to have these electrical showers. They are, and they have a switch on them, and you can switch from like cold water, warm water, or hot water. And mine was broken, and so it was either cold or hot. So you had to keep, while you're in the shower, flicking this electrical switch between cold and hot, which I was like, surely I'm going to die one day.
Because it's just electrical wiring around the shower.
Yeah,
head, like, oh my God.
Yeah, super dodgy, but you know.
Dude, epic.
But yeah, I mean, that was 5 years I did that for.
Bro, I know that feeling of, I remember when I was backpacking and you'd be the Aussie that turns up somewhere, south of Spain or some shit, and you'd meet a crew and you'd start hanging out. And then someone would be like, oh, there's this other awesome Aussie guy that comes here. And you'd be like, this guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to meet him.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, he's so cool. You guys will get along. Like, no, we won't. I'm the Aussie in this town.
Well, that's so true. When I was living in Canada, and that's where I first started training. Obviously there's a huge amount of Australians in Canada, particularly Vancouver, which where I was. So it wasn't like I was uniquely the only Australian, but I happened to be the only Australian at this gym. And this other Australian came in. It was his first week or whatever in Canada. And I remember asking him, oh, how are you finding Canada? And he literally, I'm not exaggerating this, he turns to me and he goes, oh man, it's sick, eh, bro? There's no bogans over here, eh? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, and for those who don't know, bogan is the Australian term for redneck. And I was just like, oh, dude. I was like, there wasn't.
Now there is population.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share a secret with you. This is my secret little baggie. Oh yeah, Sodi. So in this awesome little bag is 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 210 milligrams of potassium, and 70 milligrams of magnesium. Now, the sodium in here is Australian lake salt. And the thing which a lot of people don't realize, now I'm going to mix it up right now. I do this every day, sometimes twice a day, is they're not hydrated. And if you're thirsty after warm-up when you're at jiu-jitsu, you're not hydrated. So just drinking water is not good enough. I'm going to give that a little stir. I have 600 mils of water here. Some of you might like 500, depending on how salty you like it. And there's a good amount of salt here. Just drinking water, you're going to pass that. You're going to sweat that. Ooh, delicious. And the flavors are awesome. I really like this one. So for me, when I'm having this, 600 mils is the right amount. I really like it. It's not too strong, but I know that it's making a difference in me keeping the water where it needs to be, which is in my muscles, in my bloodstream. And if you want to roll better, staying hydrated is absolutely key. If you go to sodi.com.au, sodi.com.au, that's SODII, and use the code bulletproof15, you can get 15% off your order with Sodi. Stay hydrated, friends. And look, the training in Brazil thing, I had first gone to Brazil back in 2009, but I was only in Rio. And then it was off the advice from Cobrinha that he said, dude, you need to go to Sao Paulo. And I think Sao Paulo is a very different situation to Rio because it's just like, Rio is like the tourist capital of Brazil, right? Everyone's like, oh, the beaches, whatever. And that was cool. But yeah, when I went and trained with Cobrinha, it was just in like 2011. It wasn't long after he opened his gym in LA. He's like, what are you doing? You got to go to Sao Paulo, mate. You got to train with Fabio. And I remember going, and I was only in Sao Paulo for 4 weeks. I got so brutalized, like even more brutalized than my experience in Rio. And it was just, it was shattering because I thought, no, I'm pretty good now. You know, I'm a blue belt. Like I'm getting better. And oh my God, like I remember my first class, I actually got paired with Bernardo Faria.
Okay.
And they were just talking about how I think Claudio Calazans at the Abu Dhabi Pro had wrist locked a lot of people from close guard. And they would like, let's drill some wrist locks from close guard. and like, I think everybody maybe was ducking Bernardo. I actually didn't know who he was at the time, but he was there and they're like, oh, you go with him. And I was like, you know, it's lunch class. I was like, okay. just Bernardo wrist locking me from close guard for 5 minutes. And then he's like, okay, you go. And I was like, I can't. Like, my wrists are I can't do anything.
Which is funny because he's actually such a nice dude.
He's the
he has
loveliest
no
guy.
bad intentions. But I had a similar experience when I first moved there as well. Pretty much exactly the same, where I thought, I was like, man, yeah, I'm good. I'm doing well. Like, I'm a blue belt, blah, 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 blah. And my first class there was actually not the competition class, was just a standard class, which I did was like the morning class, which is still a bunch of good guys, but
Much more
like
chill.
any gym, typically the consistent morning students are the people who train for fun and then go off to work.
They got
right?
work. They got jobs.
And, you know, and I did fine in that class, was essentially like, you know, in little air quotes, the best blue belt in that class and whatever. And then when I went to the competition class, yeah, just humiliation. But yeah, it's funnily enough, you mentioned Bernardo. The first gym I ever trained at in Brazil was actually Bernardo's original gym. So most people know of him from Fabio and from Alliance, but he's not originally from there. He's originally from Brazilian top team and got his black belt under a guy called Ricardo Marques. And it just so happens that the city that my wife is from is the same city that Bernardo's from, that has multiple jiu-jitsu gyms in it. But when I first went to Brazil and wanted to train, I happened to go to that gym. Yeah, and I remember telling them that I was moving to Sao Paulo to train with Bernardo, to train with Fabio. And all the other students were like, oh my God, Bernardo from our gym, he trains there and he's a world champion. Look, that guy. And they've got like all the photos on the wall of all the black belts, like from that gym. Like this guy. And I was like, I have no idea who that is. And even when I got to Alliance, Fabio's gym has all his black belt world champions photos on the wall, big, massive, like right on the mats. And yeah, I didn't know who any of them were. Like, I didn't know who Cobrinha was, Marcelo Garcia, Serginho Moraes. Like, I didn't know who any of these people were. Gabby Garcia, no idea. But yeah, definitely got brutalized that first. There was some tears shed.
What first brought you two together? Like, because you become mates, right, and training partners and all that.
I think it was the thing that, like, it's I come to training, and the first day I was there, 2012, I came in the latter half of the year, so it was just after Worlds. It was like a July, and I came training. They're like, "Hey, there's another Aussie." They were like, "Oh, welcome back. There's another Aussie here," and I was like, "What? What?" I came back expecting my celebrity Australian status to stand, and they're like, "He's pretty good." I'm like, "Man, fuck that. I'm pretty good." And then I think the next training, they're like, "Yo, that's the Australian." I'm like, "Stop saying that. It's an Australian. I'm the Australian." But then we got paired up. I think that was the first time I met you. I think we trained. They're like, "Yeah, you two gringos go together. Fight it out, kids. We'll bet on this." Yeah, and that's when we're doing omoplatas. That's how, it might be wrong, but that's how I remember it.
Yeah,
I was like, let me go suss this guy out.
I definitely remember the omoplata story, or I think. Yeah. Which was whether it was I don't think it was our first time training together, because we already had a good rapport before this.
Because we
happened.
hadn't rolled.
Yeah,
that's why the rapport was good.
Yeah, maybe. But this drill we were doing where you started in an omoplata, and I was going first, as in the person attacking, and I just instantly switched from an omoplata to a triangle. and tap JT, and then I just kind of.
I mean, I have a hard time recollecting, but I specifically remember.
Yeah. And then I said, like taking candy from a baby. and he was like, motherfucker. So then when we went again, and it's still my turn, right? And we started in the omoplata, and he just very easily just deadlifted me up one-armed and just like shook me off and just went like, like a pissed off person, like throwing a bag of groceries to the ground. Just, get the off. And I was like, no.
Never again.
Yeah. But then I don't know, like I think we just had a good rapport, and we drilled a lot together. I think as well because, JT had come specifically to train. He was also then there outside of class times, which I was always there outside of class times, like doing my own drilling or whatever. So it was very easy to like have another drilling partner or be like, hey bro, rock up an hour before class, let's drill. Yeah, sick. So yeah, it's not like he had obligations like, oh, I've got to work or this family thing. He was there just to train, similarly to me. So I think that's probably where it mostly sort of came from. And then from that came all, day one, I didn't know he did strength, conditioning, mobility, and all that stuff, which wasn't labeled as bulletproof at the time. That came later. Specifically in the second trip is when I did heaps of work with JT, heaps of like punishing workouts. But on this week, the podcast episode I recorded, we were talking about...
I'm excited.
Why's that?
We have an apparel sponsor, Parry Athletic.
Bro, George came through, messaged us on the Instagram, said he's been following our program for ages. He's getting stronger and more mobile. And he's got this cool gear company called Parry, and he wants to send us some stuff.
And he told me that his mission was to create the best pair of training shorts ever.
Yeah, he wanted something that he could lift and roll in, and that could accommodate thick, muscular thighs and hips.
And that suits us.
Speaks to us.
Also, what I like is I love the colorful design. It actually looks really cool.
I am the most colorful dude on the mats these days, hands down.
I think the thing that I've loved about it is just it feels good. It feels good. It looks good. And you, ladies and gentlemen, can get a discount when you go to checkout. If you go to parryathletics.com, put in the code bulletproof20 and you get 20% off. Oh, yeah.
Different coaching styles. And we're talking about, the way Fabio used to coach and essentially how some coaches or how some students, whether it is jiu-jitsu or just any type of exercise really, some coaches are more drill sergeant-like, and some are a bit more, caring or forgiving or, words of encouragement. And at the same time, different students or individuals react to that better or worse. So JT, at least doing strength and conditioning with him, is definitely, I wouldn't say a drill sergeant, but for me, I actually quite personally respond really well to this constant feeling of like, you're just a piece of shit, bro. And just this desire to prove yourself sort of thing. And which is not too dissimilar to how Fabio would coach. But, and I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what you think, JT, because as I was having this conversation just this week, it wasn't until I was having it in the moment that I wasn't sure on a detail. Previously, I used to always say one of the things that I admire about Fabio and what he does so well is that he knows how to coach each individual a certain way. So, for example, the way that he would treat me, if you treated those morning class people or someone who just did jiu-jitsu as a hobby, if you treated them the way he would treat me, they would cancel their membership. There's no way they would continue the sport. But for me, it's what got the most out of me. But then as I was having this conversation, I thought, is that how Fabio was? Was Fabio good at coaching students on a case-by-case basis, or did he just simply divide between competitors and non-competitors? And I'm not sure if he just treated all competitors like shit. Like, I know of stories of him being really harsh on other competitors, right? But I'm not sure if he had the skill set to go case-by-case basis, or if he was just competitors get treated like this and I expect this from them and yada yada, and everyone else I'm a bit more forgiving. I don't know. Like, what do you think? I mean, you've interacted with him a whole bunch as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Fabio, from my experience, is a really tough guy. He's ultra tough, and he's a tough human, and I don't know what he learnt, but there's no mercy in him, really. I think off the mat, he's probably kind of nicer to deal with in that way, but on the mats, it's his way. That's it. And either you're going to perform to that or you're insufficient. And so, okay, that's the standard, right? He's the general, he's the coach, he's the boss. In terms of what I got from that, I mean, I did watch him hit you with the dark room, right?
Yeah.
We both trained that session. It was a night session. It was f***ing hot. And it had just rained, so the humidity was f***ing jacked.
And there was no aircon.
There was no aircon, right? And I saw Fabio pass, and I've experienced this pass. He's grinding your face off with the gi. He takes him out, he pulls out the gi, and he just waterboards you with the sweat of his belly. And
yeah, but
he's got some hair on his tummy too.
Yeah,
a little bit.
No, but This particular occasion was even worse because, all the things, it was hot. This was already my second training session of the day.
Yeah.
The gym there was an old photography studio, so there's no window. There's like a few little ventilation windows at the top of the ceiling, but there's no windows because your photo studio, obviously, you essentially want it to be dark. Yeah, no aircon, gym's packed. But he happened to be, which is not something he religiously does, or at least maybe he does now, but didn't. He was, for some reason, wearing a rash guard under his gi. Yeah. So when he was like essentially smother choking me, and I opened to gas, like it just like
sucked in.
Like cling filmed the rash guard over my mouth.
Oh,
it was, and yeah, I remember, and at the same time he was attacking like a cutting armbar, like a Superman armbar, and I remember tapping. Not from the submission, just from I was about to pass out, like I was getting suffocated big time, and. Man, I've never been so berated in my life.
Dude.
Like
and
front
he was
of
on mount, right? He was like on mount.
Yeah.
Like, why did you tap? Like, because I was watching the roll from the sideline, and I was like, going like
fuck yeah, get him.
But I was actually like, no, I was like, oh my God, I don't want, like, I would never change, like, you're going to have to die there, bro, because I would never exchange places with you right now. Fuck that. But what was crazy to me was that tapped. I didn't see the tap, but then I saw him like sit up and like start abusing you.
Bro, like so much verbal abuse, eh? Like just man, like he was just going, man, you tapped just for, the submission wasn't even on yet, referring to the arm lock. He's like, and you tap, he's like, this shit creates a weak soul. You do that again, I'll break your arm. Blah, 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 and then, and it went on and on and on, and like the round finished or whatever. And then, but like he didn't stop. It's not like he lined up the class, but then imagine you're just sitting off to the side, right? And then, and you're pretty much sulking almost. And then Fabio comes down and not intentionally sits next to me, but sits near me, right? Because it's a rest round or whatever. And then he's turning to a bunch of the other black belts as if I'm not there. Like I'm literally like right next to him, but he's addressing a group of black belts on the other side of him and just talking as if I'm not there. He's like, man, I'm rolling with Adam and he does this and that. It's like bullshit, man. Like dude's weak and they're just grilling. And I'm just like, I'm right there. I just got so verbally abused. And this goes back to what I was saying, like that sort of thing. I know this is painting like a horrible picture, but, and it wasn't super enjoyable at the time, but that's the sort of thing that for me, it's that kind of like that disappointed dad sort of thing. And then it was only like the next day, I think, he sent Mosquito after me, who was one of his best black belts. And he said to Mosquito, get him in a cutting armbar from mount for sure. And because I remember Mosquito then caught me in a cutting armbar from mount and I tapped to the armbar. And the second I tapped and Mosquito got off me, like Fabio was right there watching, and then he kind of just had a chuckle and said something along the lines of, yeah, if you tapped early, I was going to tell Mosquito not to let go or something like that. And then chuckled and walked off.
Do you look back at that and think like that was, like, are you alluding to like that's what I needed? That was an effective coaching strategy for me at that moment?
Well,
albeit traumatic?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. That's going back,
10 years.
10, 12 years, and I've never once tapped to pressure since then. That's literally the one and only time I've ever tapped to. The only time I've ever tapped since then where it wasn't a submission is, if you tap because something's gone wrong, like, like your back spasm, like something's happened.
Yeah.
So
caveat on that. I actually rolled him after that.
Oh, did you?
He did the same thing to me.
Oh, did he?
Exact same thing.
And you were like,
but
I ain't tapping, motherfucker.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, he ain't a bitch. Yeah. I was like, this is where this story's going.
Well, no. Because I witnessed that and I was like, I will die before I tap. Because I was just like, I don't want that. Like, I think what people because it was you and it was so personal, but he's also making an example out of you, right? Everyone around is like, oh shit, I don't want to be that guy. Like, it's a lesson to everyone. Like, don't be fucking weak. You better be tough. Like, so it's at your expense, but that sends a pretty fucking clear message to everyone. Like, you either take this or you don't.
Like when the Sinaloa cartel hang the headless body from the bridge.
That's
sending a
right.
message.
It's simple. But I didn't tap, but I did almost pass out from the.
Yes, I bet. Yeah.
Like, he's wearing his rashi again. Oh shit!
It's better when he doesn't, right? But no, anyway, he cutting armbar. I did tap to that, and he did pretty much break my elbow almost. And then afterwards, we would, kind of similar. End of class is over, and then they have that extra class afterwards, which is the late class, which I never understood.
Yeah,
it's like the 9 p.m. class or some shit. Anyway, he was sitting on the side, and he told a story about Jacare and about the guys being tired in Rio. He's talking about him training in Rio. He's like, "How's this heat?" And I said, "Yeah, this heat." But I'm like, it reminds me of when I was a kid, because when we in school, if it got too hot, because in primary in a public school, they'd cancel school. So there was 2, maybe 3 days in the history of high school where they were like, 49 degrees, school's off, there was no aircon. So we would just go down the pool and get sunburnt. Like, too hot inside, let's go outside. And I said to him, the heat, I don't mind the heat. And he's like, well, there was a story about Jacare, because the boys at their OG gym in Rio were complaining about the heat. And he said, this is what Fabio said to me. Apologies to any of our listeners, this story is out of context. Hey man, someone comes up to you on the street and grab your ass? What? You're not going to fight because you're tired? No. You're going to let that guy touch you? No. You fight back. It doesn't matter if you're tired. It doesn't matter the temperature. Some guy grab your ass, you punch him. I was like, okay, boss. Great story. That wasn't Fabio saying that. That was Jacare saying that to shame out the guys, right? I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, okay.
Man, Jacare has some pretty funny, weird stories.